Welcome everyone to our MFA in Writing and Publishing graduate student reading tonight. We're going to be having a whole host of students who will be reading, our first years. It's their first year in the program, and they'll continue on onwards. And then we have a really special group, which is the group that I got to kind of advise beginning with my tenure here, our graduating second years. And I'm so delighted to see all the work and hard effort that they've put into their writing and what they'll read for us this evening. So please, give everyone a round of applause. You can virtually clap, even if you're on mute, after each reading. And in the middle of our reading, we'll take a break and we'll have some Q&A and conversations. You can catch up with our readers then. So a little bit about our program. We are the MFA in Writing and Publishing program here at VCFA. We're the only residential program here on campus, but because of COVID-19, we're doing this virtually. So I thank all of you for joining us. It's really cool to see so many people who are on this call, because traditionally we have our readings on campus and students and faculty can often only invite people who are local to Vermont or who can get to Montpelier. And today we have people who are joining this reading from all across the United States and all across the world. So it's a pleasure and delight to have you, and we're so excited. Our program is multi-genre, so we have writers who work on poetry, fiction, nonfiction, playwriting, and screenwriting, and they'll be featuring their work tonight, so you get to sample a little bit of the different genres that we feature. And we also have a really strong publishing component in this program. Our students get prepared for the publishing industry if they want to enter as writers, or if they are seeking job opportunities in the publishing field, learning what it's like to work with an agent, what it's like to work with a small press, or as a freelance writer, and so on. So just a little bit of information about our program. We have several people who have been recently accepted into this program who are part of this call tonight. So it's a delight to see you, our future MFA students and future certificate in publishing students. We're still accepting applications for both of those programs, which should hopefully meet in the fall as planned in person if all goes well. So yeah, if you're interested in our program, send Lizzie or me an email or a message on chat. We'd be happy to tell you more about it. And the deadline for our program is August 1st for those who are interested. So just a couple things about this reading. We will be recording this reading this evening, and if you do not want to be featured in the reading for any reason, you can always block your video. You can turn off your video, and Lizzie will be going through a tech demo on Zoom in just a couple minutes. And in terms of best practices for the reading, we do ask that everybody mutes their microphone. This gets rid of any background noise that might occur, and that way we can hear our readers that are featured tonight crystal clear. So please do keep your microphones mute, and if you do not want your image on the screen, feel free to mute your video as well. So I am the director of the MFA in Writing and Publishing program, and Lizzie Fox is our associate director. And Lizzie is going to just, go over some of the Zoom settings, including our chat feature, in just a couple of moments. She'll also be helping MC the event, so she'll be introducing our readers for this evening. I think we've got at least 15 graduate students who will be reading. And in the middle of our set, we'll take a couple-minute break, so it can be a bio break, and you can chat with our readers. And at the end, we can have another, kind of discussion. If you have any questions for our students, we're happy to kind of field them during either of those breaks. So with that said, congratulations one more time to all of our students for a job well done. And I'm going to miss all of you guys, especially the graduating students, so much. And our graduation is on Saturday. It'll be done virtually over Zoom. And I hope to see many of you, not only the students, but the family, friends, and loved ones as well at that ceremony on Saturday. So with that said, take it away, Lizzie Fox.
All right. Our first reader tonight is Antonio Brown. So Antonio, feel free to go ahead and take yourself off mute. And one last logistical note, students, you have 5 minutes each. So there won't be a timekeeper tonight. So we're just going to be trusting you to kind of keep an eye on that yourselves. All right. All right, go for it, Antonio.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lizzie. So mine is really just an excerpt from our self-reflection letters for the cross-genre semester-long course that I just completed. I'm calling it Los Espejos en los Tiempos de Coronavirus, Realization and Reflection Crossing Genres. Writing resonates in reflection. self-reflection, as well as the light that shines in the audience of peers and mentors as one's innovative visions are realized. Whether successful or left wanting, each piece delivers respite to the wanderings of imagination left too long caged, cooped, and neglected. And before I know it, the risks and rewards accumulate, and the poems, prose, memories, mind meld into something I both never knew and have some way, always, always known. Who knew memory could be so lyrical? So I work to tell my truth in food, the tangible amidst the ephemeral occurrences, just passing through my ancestors, both alive and life sentient, and those alive residing beyond my touch, never imagined their fried chickens, biscuits, cakes, and pies held the tales of lifetimes untold. Most never imagined themselves so important to be remembered. Our lives live so far beyond our intentions. Most intended to get through each day, alive, well-fed, never thinking that their everyday efforts are the story, the meals, and the means of immortal influence, not just for the immediate progeny, but the many more believed to be beyond their reach. These are among the ways we live as our multidimensional selves, the simplest avenues left rooting to rows unending. And so while my cravings for creativity and writing begin as a means to an end, it is a larger expression of myself, my heritage, my contribution. Memories of a life and lives lived simultaneously mean to see and be seen forever in echoes, mirroring then, now, later, forever, reflection of self.
Thank you, Antonio. All right, next up we have Ukamaka Olisakwe.
Hi, everyone. I had wanted to read an excerpt from my thesis, but I called my children today and I've been a little gloomy. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from the essay I wrote last month about coping with the COVID-19 pandemic and missing my children. They live in Nigeria while I am in Montpelier in Vermont, so far away from them. The essay is called, "Is It Still Beautiful?" The only photographs I have on my LG mobile phone are my children's. They are 17, 15, and 13, and every one of those photos show them wearing big smiles and pouting or frozen in some silly Snapchat filter that make them look like some characters in an animated picture. They live in Aba, Nigeria with their father, and then I am holed up in my room somewhere in Montpelier, Vermont, the city everyone I know mistakes for its Mediterranean namesake in France, the one with the extra L, but less Gothic, more lush vegetation in the summer, and famous for its delicious maple syrup. These days, I hardly leave my room. Cars no longer pull up under my window, bustling with excited families and their dogs and their hiking partners and their skiing gadgets as they used to do a few weeks ago when winter still pummeled the trees and the streets with its blizzard. My college has moved the remainder of the semester online. My fellowship at the college store has been suspended indefinitely and the library has been shut down. After the dreary, gloomy, stretched out months of winter, the sun wastes on the asphalts and the concrete curbs because everyone is worried about the pandemic that is prowling from country to country like the biblical beast of the night. Children and their coaches no longer play basketball or baseball or even soccer on the college green. Yesterday, I walked over to the college vestibule to pick up the document the kind student services person printed for me. On the doors of the college properties are polite precautionary warnings about the COVID-19 pandemic. A similar notice hangs on the wall of the lavatory sink, which I share with my colleagues in the dorm. As I crossed the really empty street, I wondered if I was, in fact, living in one of those bizarre apocalyptic films of the 90s that scared me away from horror films and warped psychological thrillers till today. I speak with my children via WhatsApp video or voice calls every other day, and each time they pick up the phone, my last baby, Chu, would ask, "How is Montpelier? Is it still beautiful?" He asks this all the time. He also asks after my friends, whom he respectfully calls auntie, as Nigerians are often are wont to do. How is Auntie Noni? How is Auntie Amara? How is Auntie Rebecca? Have you seen them today? He asked 2 days ago over voice call. He sounded light, happy. If I closed my eyes and imagined I was there in the parlor with him and his siblings, he would be sitting astride my favorite sofa, munching on a piece of biscuit or crackers, his attention half on the TV, which most definitely would be displaying his favorite animated show, Avatar. How is Auntie Rebecca? My son is 13 years old and has a mild speech impediment, and as such, he chooses his words cautiously and pronounces them just as cautiously or recklessly when he is upset. When we spoke, there was a certain carefulness with the way he worded Rebecca, because you see, my son sometimes rushes over the R sound, jumbling it together with other easily voiced consonants, such that if he is distracted or upset while speaking, Rebecca would tumble out of his mouth as a baker. But yesterday, he said it right, his tone filled with joy, with laughter. He was not paying that much attention to me, and I could sense that, but he was aware enough to want to participate in the ritual of asking after all my friends and how the city was treating me. Everything is fine. Everyone is fine, I wanted to say. But his question had ripped a hole into my carefully stacked compartment, because only moments ago, I had shared the kitchen with Rebecca, and we avoided each other like awkward strangers on the pathway. Before now, we used to be in each other's space, our arms wrapped around each other in our favorite photos of ourselves. Now there is a huge wall sitting between us because we have to adhere to the rules of social distancing, because we know the importance of keeping our hands to ourselves, because we understand that we also pose a risk to each other and could bring harm to each other. I wanted to tell Chu about this. I wanted to tell him that I can no longer hug my friends, that there is a weight pressing down my chest these days, and my body feels deprived of love, of warmth, that my classmates and I share amenities in our Glover Hall dorm, but ever since the virus began to sweep through the United States, we have been practicing the new ways of being, how to congregate on video conferencing apps, to wipe down the surfaces with disinfectant after our mates had used them without coming off as rude, that we have to give each other a wide berth and laugh nervously when we walk into hall just so our bodies don't touch, that I wash my hands too often, much more than I had done in my entire life, and the skin of my back and the skin of the back of my hands had begun to peel, and it burned every time I let the ladder sit for 20 seconds. I wanted to tell him all this, but only a whimper spilled out of my mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Uka. Beautiful. Next, we have Molly Martin.
All right. Hi, everybody. Before I get started, I just wanted to give a quick content warning. I'm going to read a piece concerning pregnancy loss, miscarriage, and abortion. So if that's not something that you are ready to deal with right now, come back in about 5 minutes and we will be ready for you. He looks up with an eagerness she doesn't often see in doctors' offices. Eyes wide, a slight smile, as if awaiting inevitably good news. For her, these places are laden with anxiety, with hushed conversations about contingencies, options, and worst-case scenarios. The volume of grief is low. One mustn't make a scene as the world ends. She feels his optimism like an assault. How dare he exist in a world that predisposes him to expect only joyful tidings? Of course she knows that luck is not finite, that his good fortunes are not balanced by her ill luck, but still for a blink or two, longer than is charitable or rational, she hates the smiling man, the father in waiting. Everywhere lurk reminders of the ways in which she is inadequate, triumphant birth announcements, gleefully self-effacing discussions of the trials of parenting, cards and flowers, and matchy-matchy baby and me outfits. Everyone seems to understand that motherhood is the natural state of adult female, as if mother and woman are synonyms rather than separate ways of being. No greater joy, best thing I've ever done, greatest achievement. And she wonders why these mothers are content to be only and just and nothing more. and she hates herself for longing to join the sisterhood of motherhood. So, you can do what any alley cat can do. Big deal. Fruit flies can reproduce, and no one thinks that that's their ultimate expression of creativity or self. And yet, how to be a woman if you can't be a mother? How to smile and nod and go along with a society that elevates the ideal of motherhood, that believes so strongly in feminine duty to reproduce that it would deny a person control of their own body in service to motherhood. Can there be any more clear indication of the importance of motherhood than that they are willing to enslave people rather than allow them to find an escape from the chains of biology? And yet, tiny hands and tiny feet, a fuzz of hair, the perfect little fingers crafted in her body, built from bits of herself and yet not her at all. A new being, distinct even though she lived for only an hour. So she chooses. While angry men fight to take away her right to choose, she returns again to the doctor's office. She returns to watch the hopeful father-to-be and see his expectation met with phrases like, "Everything's normal," and "Congratulations," and "Any day now." He doesn't know the black knife of pain that silence brings as the face of the ultrasound tech goes still and blank. The tech gets up and leaves. Reinforcements must be needed. The tech doesn't get paid enough to sign death warrants for dreams. There will be no first day of school, no sleepless nights. There will be no humble brags of parental tribulations met with commiseration and the secret bonds of parenthood. There is only an empty womb, and self-recriminations. I should have exercised more. I exercised too much. I should have eaten a healthier diet. I deprived myself too much. I was too stressed. I took it too easy. I'm not a mother. I am not a woman. I am nothing. Enraged that she is still and always was a woman, that she needn't check the mother box, but no one cares. How broken she must be to have lost her own child. She knows what they're thinking. When the woman is only a function of the womb, how can she not be a mother? She wanted her daughter for her own reasons, and she resents that others overlay her desire with their societal preconceptions. They act as if her defeat was inevitable, as if all women must be so defeated, as if she surrendered to motherhood and is now its prisoner. That her return to the doctor's office is the only possible course of action that she could take, given her womb. The worst part is she wonders if they're right. For all her talk, she feels the need so deeply as to be indescribable, an ephemeral yearning that infects her as surely as any virus. And yet, she reasons that to see the beast of motherhood for what it is, to lose her daughter, to have her body raked clean of all remnants of her pregnancy, and then to choose again, knowingly, not driven by instinct, this separates her, elevates her from the other thoughtless mothers. She can be, has been, she will be a woman. She could have been, maybe still, a mother, but she needn't be. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Beautiful. Next, we have Sara Stancliffe.
Hello. I'm going to read 5 short poems. Some of them are old, some of them are new. I don't really have titles for them, so I'm just going to go right through them. Lake water heaves over rock bed. I sing to the sky, my feet in the blue, a sad language, a whisper beating from my breast. Ugly goddess of love or lust, no less my mother, though you crush me, and the soaring, delirious, repulsive need I have to be one. I want the dream, not to run away from storms, not some quick summer worshiping of skin, and never using up a life with wanting. I ask you, shadow woman, show me how lives are put together. Fluffy TV hair and honey sweet tongue are not me. Not smoothly waxed skin, tiny fashion arms, enormous milky breasts, and meaty swimsuit butt. Let me say what I must. A woman or a girl can be 1,000 things. An elaborate apparatus for pleasing, a symphony screamed to the sky, a smear of fast fingers and feet, blue and red in the wind. Hers is the lifeblood you wanted, needed, could have used up. She will drive you mad, but she doesn't see you beneath her daytime dreams. Beauty is never all there is. He slinks away. She aches for something never hers. I watch and would whisper my affection, an urge to dress her in yards of pink sunlight, let her sleep across my lap on the soft sofa, and picture a girl's dream of almost. I love me in love. She thinks music and says so, springs about with drunk and curious feet, smells the sea spray of better places after rain. I want her always. She gives quick, long kisses, fiddles with frisky fingers, catches every companion's storm and pets it smooth. I am afraid to break her beneath all my bitter. But after my boiling blood cools, our breast beats, tiny, quiet, beautiful. Together we are perfect. I watched and wanted for 1,000 tiny days, but not one thing was heard. All delirious need, all long, deathly quiet. Every still, soft, black panting of heaving urges, a chanting to the old mad moon each night, worshiping sweaty and bare at the bed, and after, I would dare to catch some whisper of sleep, let my breast, my feet, my wild woman tongue rest. I could almost recall the feeling, that beautiful affection from honeyed fingers, his music a companion language, playful. How frantic I wanted and was wanted. How these things I dreamed could come to me so fast and perfect. Women are goddesses who can live on the sweet and the bitter. But when you ask for me, your curious, gorgeous love like summer storm, you must know I will have better. And here's the last one. I'm drunk on sisters, with these, mine, old and youthful and favorite, we little women, the boyish, restless, wild bird, the darkness dissolved. We are shots to the face, the arm, head to feet, shots hissing to the sky, fierce. Girlfriend persona, a riddle. Press her from peace. She shows rich, bitter daybed body language, roasted beneath mercurial sun, quick to change, from drinking white peach froth in drooling heat to Gemini storm, a smoky mocha mug. Yes, woman is warm, purring, buzzing, stirring down your throat. So drink. Like water, we cool, hot, spring, whisper, break, boil, summer, scream, move always as one, together.
Thank you so much, Sara. Next, we have Darla Hitchcock.
So this is an excerpt of the novel I've worked on for a while and will be my thesis, part of my thesis. And just to set you guys up, this is about 6 or 7 years after a catastrophe has ended the world, kind of like what we're in now. When they pulled back into the farm the following winter, Kay wasn't at his expected spot, waiting in the courtyard, ready to take her into his arms. That was odd. He'd always had an almost preternatural instinct for the exact moment she was going to pull up in her big truck, jump out, and run to him. He was never anywhere but right there, waiting, smiling, ready. Shayla clapped her hands together as she dropped out of the warm cab into the snowy cold. She'd have to find her man, but first she needed to put her gloves on. Then there he was. She saw him walking towards her from behind the barn. Why does he look so sad? Shayla thought as she made her way to him. She stopped short just a few feet away when another woman came out the barn door and folded herself into Kay's arms the way Shayla should have done. Dready glamour girl, still beautiful, still made up, still manicured, and, Shayla supposed, still haughty. As cruelty would have it, Kay's new love also had a belly bulging with life. Of course, it had to be. Someone to give Kay a child. He'd lost 2 of his 3 daughters in the big death, and the 3rd a few years ago. He bemoaned no longer being a father. When new children were presented to him, his face took on a wistful, haunted look, even as he kissed and smiled at babies and toddlers. Shayla could never given him children. She had wanted to. "Hey, baby, can you give us a few minutes? I have to talk to Shayla," Kay said as he kissed her on the cheek. "Baby," thought Shayla, as the ground whirled away from under her feet. "Sure," said Angela, as she shot Shayla a look of triumphant contempt. What exactly is this girl's problem with me, Shayla thought. Then she looked at Kay. "I guess I don't even have to ask." "Let's go upstairs, have some tea," Kay said softly. She followed him numbly up the stairs to the apartment that had been a second home to her for years. They attempted small talk while he made the tea, but they were awkward and strained with each other. Finally, Shayla asked the question she needed to ask. "Why her?" "She stayed," he said. "You never did. You always left." "Don't you think I would have stayed if you'd really needed me?" "Shayla," he responded. It was an old argument. "Why didn't you ask me to?" "I couldn't." "Why?" she almost shouted. "They needed you more than I do." It struck her like a brick in the gut. "Great," she said, angry now. "No, I don't mean it like that." He reached out to touch her, but she pulled away. "I don't mean that I didn't need you, that I don't love you," he trailed off. "You're a leader. What you do is important. You have to do what you do. I got tired of being alone in between. I wanted to build a life with someone. I got tired of being with women I didn't care about when I wanted to be with you." The brick turned sharp like a razor now. "How many?" she asked. "What?" "How many?" It wasn't a fair question, she knew. Their agreement had never been about monogamy, but about loving each other wholly when they were in each other's arms, when they were lucky enough to be with each other. "I don't know, 4, 5 maybe." He looked like a little boy who just discovered he was in trouble for something he hadn't known was wrong. "How many for you?" he asked. "None," she answered, as tears filled her eyes and slipped down her face. "None." The next several weeks and months were spent feeling like a piece of glass crazing in the fire, feeling as if each crack, each fracture to her persona set off a chain of cracks and fractures that set off still more cracks and fractures. Her heart was the San Andreas. Every release of pressure, every tear created more pressure, more eruptions of feelings she didn't want to have. She felt as though the deaths had started all over again. Or was she the only one dying? She began to take on the hollow, gaunt appearance of some of the less fortunate of the survivors. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep, she couldn't think. She was crumbling and she certainly couldn't lead. Then one day, back out on the road, days or weeks or months after her life had ended again, Shayla woke to something that wasn't pain. The light slanting through the window in the back of her truck was lovely, the dust motes floating in the air like fairies in the forest. And the sound she heard was not her own weeping, not her gnashing of teeth. Hadn't heard that sound in so long, hadn't heard it though it'd been there. The slightest touch of a smile graced her lips, and she knew that her heart was beginning to right itself, just as the world had done.
Thank you, Darla. Love it. Next, we have Rebecca Jamieson.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be reading from my thesis, which is a loosely connected series of personal essays. And so this is the 3rd essay in the manuscript, and it's called Sewing White Supremacy. I'm standing in front of a Ku Klux Klan hood. It floats at eye level, disembodied in the glass museum case. The plaque reads, "Found in East Montpelier, Vermont, cotton circa 1920. The hood is mended. The seam above the brow is hand sewn with delicate, precise stitches. The eye holes are carefully zigzagged by machine. The seam at the nose is crudely made, and a few big, clumsy stitches gather the corner of the right eye hole, threads dangling into the empty socket. My maternal great-grandfather, Jesse Lincoln Baker, was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. His middle name, I can only imagine, was taken from the man who freed the slaves. My mother taught me to sew. She learned from her mother, who learned from hers. Faint yellow stains on the hood could be food, sweat, or faded blood. Nearby, another plaque reads, Ku Klux Klan celebration, July 4th, 1927, Montpelier, Vermont. A glossy black and white photograph shows a pickup truck covered in white flowers, a marching band dressed in crisp uniforms. The American flag is proudly displayed everywhere, draped around the circular shield with the Klan's emblem proclaiming, "Klansmen, we greet you." How did the hood get ripped? My mother sewed a ghost costume for me for Halloween when I was about 8. Instead of a sheet draped over my head, she made a pointed hood. It was supposed to droop over to one side in a squiggle like a ghost from Ghostbusters, but it didn't. When my older sister saw me, she shrieked, "You look like you're in the Klan." My mother's face went white. She pushed and pulled the hood, but it kept standing. Memories of sewing could map my whole life. I am 5 and holding a fat embroidery needle, making long stitches with bright blue thread in a circle of cloth held tight by a wooden hoop. I am 10 and spinning around and around in the new blue and purple dress my mother made me. I am 20 and sewing my own dresses. My friend Kathleen tells me that I'm the only person she knows who's in front of a sewing machine 10 minutes before a party, trying to finish what I'm going to wear. I am 35 and sewing masks for my friends during the coronavirus pandemic. Seeing my face covered by the delicate gray and white floral print, it strikes me that a mask is similar to a hood. It can protect the wearer or conceal their identity. During the height of the pandemic, I saw a video of 2 Black men being escorted out of an Illinois Walmart at gunpoint because they refused to take off their medical masks. Masks that both the CDC and President Trump had encouraged all Americans to wear in public in an attempt to slow the spread of the virus. Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman, told 911 dispatchers that the 17-year-old was wearing a dark hoodie and looked like a suspicious guy before Zimmerman shot him. In America, hoods and masks were never designed to protect Black people. I think of her, the woman who mended the hood I'm facing, sitting at the window with her sewing basket, her fingers drawing the thread through the white cloth 1 stitch at a time, or sitting at the treadle machine, her hands moving the cotton under the needle, foot working the pedal. I have never made a hood, but I easily could. I have sewn so many other things. It might seem daunting at first, but it's easier than you think. All you need to do is follow these simple steps. Start by determining which garment you wish to add the hood to. Will you find the garment or will you create it? The museum plaque reads, found in East Montpelier, Vermont. But one does not simply find a Klan hood from 1920. Finding implies innocence, a white blur tossed from a horse-drawn wagon, perhaps plucked from the mud by a child's fingers, kept safe for decades in a box of curios, baseball trading cards, silver dollars, locks of hair. More likely, the hood's owner squirreled it away in the attic while his children grew up, had children of their own, until they found it again years later. They couldn't throw it away and they couldn't keep it. They couldn't donate it to the museum and have their names engraved on the plaque. So it was simply found. If you choose a found garment, it should have a neckline that sits comfortably around the base of your neck. Lay it on top of the fabric, fold in the arms, then outline the body. what else is living in my hands? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next, we have Kelsi Long.
Hi, everybody. Is my mic okay? Can everyone copacetic? Rad. I'm going to be reading from my thesis, like I think most of the graduating students are. I wrote a book that's somewhere between a collection of horror stories and a collection of personal essays. The personal essays are sort of reimaginings of memories and experiences that I have had that assume that I was a movie monster while they were happening. So some of them are werewolves and, Swamp Thing and vampires and all that sort of thing. This is the last piece in the thesis. This is how the book ends, theoretically. And it's a fantasy of somebody else's heartbreak. I'm imagining that I'm another monster in the book watching me have a nice time. It's called Voyeuristic Heartbreak Monster Fantasy. The train wreck foretold in the tarot reading has come to pass. That witch, that bitch, she was right all along. The blast burned your eyebrows off, and you don't know what an eyebrow pencil is, where to buy one, which direction to draw in to make the strokes look real. Your baby popped the silver spoon out of her mouth like a lollipop and bopped you right on your ski slope nose with it. I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. I'm not around to tell you so, though. Or pat you on the wounded ass, tell you someday things will be sunlit again. In this dreamy haze, it is honey light on a late July afternoon. The trees throbbing green, lakeside air soupy thick in its breathability. You're wandering around the happy Saturday street like a lonely drifter, the way I sometimes do, trying to get a contact high off other people's joy. I can tell you, sometimes it's not going to work. But as with the train wreck, the moving truck stuck in your front yard, the diet shakes piled in a box on your living room floor, you're going to have to learn this one the hard way. The hard way. Whatever. Back to your wandering. Your fugue state leads you around by the door knocker in your nose, presses on your shoulders like book bags, like your father's hands, makes the spine inside your back crackle and curve under pressure. The world is heavy, heavy, heavy. You shiver in the middle of summertime. Poor, lonely, miserable you. Nobody there to heal you or laugh at your cynical jokes. If only somebody out there understood you. That, of course, is when you see me, over there, across the street, through a sea of sun hats and poutine stands between us. I am beauty, I am grace, you never expected to see me in this place. There's a cone in my hand. Oh God, you can't remember what my favorite flavor was, but you can see it shining in the sun. There's a trickle running down my forearm. Your tongue pushes at the wall of your front teeth. Please let me clean her up. What would she taste like these days? Coffee? Matcha raspberry? Pralines and cream? Just like that, another tongue is wrapping itself around hers. Two long arms, strong and warm like the sunny concrete at the edge of the pool. The worst part of it all is not how his hair catches the light and throws it back in your face, not the way the handlebars gleam in the heat, not the radiant bubble at the edge of his body that you can sense but not entirely see. No, the worst thing about it, this thing you're watching with your nose pressed against the glass of a window all the way across the street from me, is the width of my smile, the honeyed authenticity of it. It's easy and free and natural. There are no sandbags tied to the edges of it, nothing conditional to dim it. Remember that late, late night when you told somebody she had the body of a porn star, earnestly, and you felt like it was the perfect compliment? Remember the way you held her left leg up to the light like a precious gem? Well, watch that leg swing over the back of the motorcycle, flirtatious kick of the hem of her skirt in an errant breeze. Almost enough to see the open jaws of her panties' leg holes. The man with the long arms kicks the engine to life with his strong leg, his black boot, like something out of a movie. And then the sunset swallows them, and you're just a puppy behind the pet store glass, breath fogging, the corners of your mouth quivering under some invisible weight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsi. Next up, and our last reader before intermission, is Nina Apasani.
Hi. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, cool. The first piece I'm going to read is a teeny tiny little poem. Gentle Viper, period. Your tongue flickers, I reign. Life stabs us all, us all. You drop a bird upon my head, scarlet trickles from her eye. Dawn recalls the dusk's scare, hurt. Find your way back with love, comma. Next piece I'm going to read is a letter from a fictional character to an alien that she went on a date with. Dear you, my love, thank you for the amazing time. I really must expand my vocabulary, as I have said that word 1,000 times in the past decade. Oh, what you've done to me and my tongue. I was a mere human, sitting on this soulless rock, destined to die in my own vain filth. But then you arrived. I can hardly believe that all this is true, that it happened to me, that you happened to me. After all, my planet is so new to the galactic conglomerate, I still don't understand what a damn brackets and gibberish is, parentheses, laughs/scoffs melodramatically. Neither do any of us really, humans, that is. Yet I stumbled onto you, my dear, and you onto me. That bar, if I am honest, is a foggy picture in my mind, the gibberish cocktail, that heavenly beverage which nearly turned me from atheist to nun, brims in the edges of my mind's eye. But you, your lavender eyes that snatched my heart from my mouth, your voice, if it can be called that, like a fairy tale coursing through my core, and you I remember as strongly, as individually as I remember Vermont cheddar cheese. Vermont is a small place on my hometown, my home planet. I think at first it was sheer mystery that latched me to you, that led me off the cliff of oblivion, blissful oblivion. I've always had a weakness for the mysterious, for that which chills my atoms and ignites the child in me. And I was so desperate for a mystery, for wings I could actually hold on to and follow, that wouldn't be wrenched from my grasp the way the universe was. All those years I spent in school, shattering myself for the love of glittering unknowns, were truly a waste, weren't they? At least if I had become a writer, I'd always have stories to tell, but my math is empty and my physics unsound. All I knew when I first met you was that I knew nothing of the universe and that I would die at the bottom of bottled vodka. I am sorry for blemishing this page. I cannot tell whether my tears are of delight or sadness still. How silly, I know. I have you in my life now, all our memories. Lord, there are not enough expressions in any language, pardon my earth-centric tongue, to capture how grateful I am for you, for our times together. I've never even made it to the top of an earthly climbing wall, not even those short ones they have for little kids, yet you got me onto that zip line. I have no words. Speeding through the cosmos at near light speed, through the dawns and dusks of planets, through the births of everlasting fires and the deaths of the impossible, through a brightness so beautiful, I dumped my lunch on the poor peoples of Omega Carat, lots of numbers. My vomit must have littered entire generations, an accident for which I shall never be able to apologize. Yet my heart could not stop, not at the screams of the people upon whom I rained acid, not even at the sight of my own end. I stepped off that zip line, no longer human. And then you took me to a food spaceship for dinner. We ate and laughed and drank like all of this was normal. And all the while, I did not know whether I was munching on plants, if other planets even have botanical equivalents, or the flesh of the dominant species. I know not whether I cannibalized my own intelligence or if I later shit out the digested remains of fried time. And then we kissed goodnight. Good decade, I mean. Time itself stopped as our souls melded, and for one moment, one permanent grid of the fourth dimension, we were each other's universes. No cosmic gas cloud could match your beauty in that moment, the raw delicacy of your soul bared to me, and the freedom of my own spirit fracturing to let you in, to absorb you and your essence, so a piece of you would always be with me. You, my special friend, my dear. And then you were gone, like a dream. I do sometimes wonder if it all might have actually been a dream. It has been 10 years after all, and my life is not as long as yours. Even if you were just a dream, though, I want you to know how amazing you are, just how extraordinary a piece of shit you are. Sincerely and with all of my love, Zedia. P.S. Really though, thank you. Without you, I would have gone to my grave believing the earth really was soulless. Without you, I could not have found the love I was looking for, though it was right here, in the corner of my chest and of earth's mouth all along. Life.
Thank you. I love it. There's lots of clapping happening. Okay, welcome back. Our quick little break is over. I came back with a plate of cheese and crackers because we talked about it and I decided I couldn't resist. I hope others did too. And starting off the second half, I'm going to welcome Virginia Booth. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Virginia.
Hi everyone, I'm going to be reading 2 lyric prose pieces tonight. The first one is called Seasick Skies. On my morning walks, I meditate and I think about our tumbled heavens and seasick skies. I crave a solution in time that I will see a pause, a breath, a reset. I think of the barren lands we climb through, nothing unknown. For anything that we have discovered, we have equally destroyed. What of our crumbled dreams and final words and quiet eyes? We crawl through tomorrow, through today, and ignore the uncertainty that evades us. Like a heavy weighted blanket that we use for comfort. For in that uncertainty lives hope. Through tumbled heavens, we pray through glory into strife and on and on. We pray not to be forgotten as we slip into oblivion. Through tumbled heavens, even angels fall, and martyrs are forgotten. The second piece I'll be reading tonight is called Hourglass. When silence echoes and rings in your ears, when the shadows run and chase your fears, I'll sing you a song. When time is ill and the clocks are asleep, I'll turn them back so your thoughts can steep, and I'll sing you a song. When the taste still remains and it's so bittersweet, I'll pour you a new cup and give you my seat, and then sing you a song. When it's almost over and you're close to the end, I'll take your hand and guide you past the last bend. Then we can sing our song. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. I love seeing all the video clapping, the silent clapping. It's great. Next, we have Tyler Glass to drink.
Hello. So I was trying to decide if it's easier to be vulnerable on video or in person, and I'm not really sure. So I'm going to read a short essay from a collection of essays that I've been working on about trans embodiment. This is called What a Trans Body Leaves Behind. The uterus's job is to shed one coat and grow another one every month. It is like a constantly revolving wardrobe, all in various shades of red. At 12, my uterus signed up for work and began shedding and growing, but it wasn't very good at staying on schedule. It would show up late for work, sometimes not at all. And other times it would shed so viciously, I crouched over in searing pain. In the 22 years that my uterus did its job, I went through hundreds of boxes of stubby, unbleached tampons that are now sitting in various landfills around the country, decomposing, leaching blood and cotton back into the earth. I can still smell the musty tang from the tampon as I pulled it from my body, partially disgusted, but also fascinated. This was what my body smelled like on the inside. I'll never see what my body looks like under the skin, inside the swollen folds, down the canals that are all connected somehow, but I do know how I smell in there, or how I used to smell when I bled. My body was always reluctant to bleed. Sometimes I would wait 3 months before my uterus sloughed its lining. When it was finally ready, blood would flow out of me for 2 days, reckless fluids rushing to be rid of their constraints. Then it trickled out like the last few drops of red wine, dribbling down an upturned glass. I was frugal. I resisted buying tampons and was always forgetting to keep them stocked at my house. When I could, I used rolled up toilet paper instead, but I hated the way the paper rubbed against my body as a constant reminder that something was happening down there that I would prefer to deny. Tampons, once shoved within, were usually undetectable, since they nestled conveniently into the narrow space just beyond the folds. But sometimes after hours inside, they would get squishy, restless, and drift towards the opening, getting caught in the folds, pushing them apart uncomfortably. I remember all this now with no sense of loss. I feel only relief that I no longer bleed. Denial and dissociation held me through those years. I can still see the little white tampon box sliding down the conveyor belt at the grocery store, lifted and scanned by the person at the register, then dropped into my canvas bag so casually, as if it was a bag of spinach or a can of refried beans, just another item to purchase. Now my eyes don't even notice the boxes on the shelf as I look for shaving cream or deodorant. They're invisible to me. My mind has found all kinds of ways to maneuver around memory, blocking, discarding, distracting. My body has changed in many ways since I began transitioning with weekly testosterone shots about 3 years ago. But aside from no longer bleeding, the physical changes are mostly on the outside of my body. I can chart the external evolution weekly. Hair growth in many places, hair loss in others, lower voice. In the months following my top surgery, I decided not to have a hysterectomy. Although for a long time it was less of a conscious decision and more of a passive inevitability. I just never really thought about it until now. Getting top surgery was the most seminal decision I ever made for myself. Having a flat chest has liberated me, affirmed my sense of identity. As my scars heal, I have learned to tend to myself, rubbing salve on them daily, massaging the wounds gently to encourage the return of sensation, to ease the numbing. I have never regretted the decision, even for a moment, despite the incredibly long and uncomfortable healing process. Yet as the months passed, I thought often of the flesh that was removed from my chest. What was taken away through a suction tube was part of me. Now that tissue too, with the bloody tampons, sits in a landfill, melting back into earth. I feel a loss, grief even, for that which was removed. I feel more whole on the inside, but perhaps severed on the outside. I wear my scars as a mark of this severance, and they tell a story of my past. A hysterectomy would leave no visible scars. This story would be contained on the inside of my body, where no one would ever read it. It would be a hidden document that only I knew was there, hiding in the moist dark, the void surrounded by other organs that now have more room to reorganize themselves. I imagine, based on the pictures from textbook, what my uterus looks like, how my fallopian tubes curve like cupped hands. I see my uterus as a room inside of me that now has shriveled, seemingly useless, but still takes up space. But it is still alive. I want to tuck my hands in there to keep them warm, or store slips of paper with secrets and lines from poems, so the words might be absorbed into my cells like tiny messengers with letters that are carried throughout my body. I have a secret room inside of me, an annex or a cupboard, an unopenable place closed to the public. I can't let this too, like the flesh from my chest, disappear into the land as refuse. I still mourn that flesh that got sucked through a tube. I don't want to mourn any more than I have to. And there will be other things I will need to mourn. I need to save my grief for those times. Rubbing my hands over my abdomen, I feel there is fullness inside. If I let go of more of myself, I am not sure what will be left. I need all of myself right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next, we have Noni Salma.
I'm going to read a personal essay, well, an essay called The Killing of a Mother. It had been 3 months since he visited my father, the man whose presence was once a fixture and monument in our household. Although he had built a 6-bedroom duplex in Okaka, the mainland axis of Lagos 10 years ago, he had also just married a second wife, and I had been spending more time with her than he did with us. His presence didn't just evaporate at once, of course. He had started with spending 2 days in the week with her and 5 days with us. And then it became 4 days with her and 3 days with us, until it became 2 days with us and 5 days with her. It was a kind of change that didn't need to be discussed or approved. We knew it as it happened, and we knew it when the days changed, and we knew it was only a matter of time till they changed again. I remember how upset my mother was, her voice looming in protest as if its weight could turn the tides around. My mother was the kind of woman who thought fury and badgering were tools for problem solving. She had begun to make peace with the fact that he had a new wife, and information she had received from a complete stranger one sunny afternoon in a clothing store on Sanusi Fafunwa, Victoria Island. The woman, a casual daily passerby around the store, had worn the weight of this information on her face on behalf of my mother and could no longer bear the guilt that sank deep into her skin anytime she walked past her store. And so my mother, despite her own natural inclination to listen less to the ambiguity of a stranger's intel, she obliged her. She wanted to disbelieve it, but the total stranger had close information about her husband that were too personal, too true to dispute. And so when she confronted him later that night, he did not deny it. Rather, he begged her. And even when he begged her, it was obvious that his decision was final and that he was only begging because he had not told her. He was a Muslim man after all, and his religion permitted him to marry more than one wife. And so naturally, she would negotiate her emotions depending on the day and what he had said the moment he walked in. Did he carry with him a happiness so palpable? He told stories of the other woman, her affection, submission, and her ability to offer what she couldn't. Or was he cold, an indication of tensions unsaid, his face carrying residue of a fight from the night before with this other woman? His presence loomed just as his absence always did. The house did not know how to work without him. We did not know how to work without him. How could we? We only knew how to live daily by the manual he created, by the order he manifested. He was the head of the house, after all, the structural hold, and so it made sense that the house was deflated in his absence. We made our own new routine, which worked fine. Mother was father and mother, and sometimes I was both child and father, being the first child. But we all knew our real place whenever he returned, even if it was just for 10 minutes. We all retraced our steps back to our positions like zombies who had been holding on the line. I watched as he gave my mother some money when he arrived. Mother no longer had the power to nag when he came, because then he would go and not return for months, because he knew that would send a message to her, put her in her place. And he usually did, because Daddy proved that he could parent from miles away. He would send our school fees and upkeep money through his driver, Uncle Fred, and everyone would get their upkeep money except Mother. A woman like Mother needed money to be her true self. Money brought out a glow in her, which also meant that she could be irritable. With money, she had power, and money made her cantankerous, boisterous, and real. Without money, she was a ghost. Her wings clipped. The sparkle in her eyes could barely contain themselves when she counted the money. It couldn't have been more than 50,000 naira. I knew this because of the heft and because there were 1,000 naira notes. I saw in her eyes the gratitude, the overplaced kind, because I knew it couldn't have been because of the paltry sum. It had to have been because by giving her money, she had seen the possibility at reconciliation. He had stopped communicating with her after the huge fight my mother had with the other woman at my cousin Anuola's wedding. My mother had never been one to handle conflict or tension well, and he knew that, yet he invited our number one act nemesis to the party. It was as if he had been baiting her and she fell for it. Someone had collided into someone, which led to a barrage of insults and curses swinging off faster than a plate of moi moi could melt into the guest's mouth. My mother told us that the other woman had looked at her the wrong way, which set off her anger timer. But my mother's anger timer only needed to set eyes on the woman in order to go off. I knew my father well. I knew why he was giving her the money. He had done this out of pressure, knowing how our deteriorating finances were starting to look on his image. When I jacked up Toyota Camry 2000 model, I packed up at the junction down our street. It was as if she had hauled a megaphone, sang to every car that cared to listen that her wealthy husband had abandoned her and no longer cared for her. At least that's how I imagined my father felt when he heard. My father was a kind of rich Nigerian man who did things for his family, not because he loved them, but because he saw them as an extension of himself that needed to be represented positively for others. I hated the way she knelt down to thank him. A cautious Nigerian tradition I didn't think he deserved or was necessary. Eshe sir, she said, as if the man she was kneeling to thank was her boss and not her husband. I hated how impassive he looked, as if our appreciation meant nothing to him. It was as if him acknowledging her gratitude meant acknowledging her emotions, and acknowledging her emotions meant acknowledging her. So he dished the only emotions available to him, one that was neither love nor anger, coldness. Thank you.
Thank you, Noni. Next, we have Dayton J. Schaefer.
Hi, guys. All right, so I am going to read part of my thesis, of course, like everybody else. It is a two-part cycle, full-length play, but don't worry, I'm not just going to sit here and argue with myself for 5 minutes, because unlike traditional theater, which is dialogic, this is monologic. So this is a collection of 25 autobiographical monologues. And as you'll hear, each monologue is framed with a refrain of the American dream is, as a means to explore the national voice through my own personal lens. And what makes this really exciting is that the refrains, when it'll be performed, are going to be interactive. So the audience will be part of the play, part of the memory-making process. They will be reciting each refrain. So here we go. The American dream is a hometown marketplace, dying days of an old world market in the early 90s, anachronistic and chic, blacksmiths beside coffee shops, beside butchers, beside boutiques, Baroque in divergent booths, hand-bat haggling through brisket, perfecting on a sawed-off oak barrel. You always went with your mother, and she encouraged curiosity, free rein to leave her side and explore. You'd sit on cold stone floors full of sawdust and soot, while grazing your fingertips along the soothing burn of the tops of comic books. Walk through blue rows of triple-stacked aquariums, massive catfish, and scattershot schools of cichlids that you count, dance fingertips along the flying dots of fish. Follow the leathersmith's polish, deepening a set of scarlet horse reins. Gaze up at the raised counter where thick-necked deli clerks shouted and tossed paper packages. You spent $2 on a jar of bread and butter pickles and sat at the jazz tables in the heart of the market, lounging in the eye of the storm, a calming nexus. An elderly woman plunked down one table over and began carefully unfolding her crisp package. She stiffened, stood, sat, marveled at her lazy but charming wad of beef. 5 feet away, a grill cook dug a claw into the same cow and smacked it back and forth between oregano-coated palms, shaped, wheeled a fleshy plate, gingerly laying it on a sizzling grill. Your young self leaned into the unforgiving seal of bread and butter pickles and popped the top. You found the elderly woman's eyes and walked over like all kids do, with both hands, an offering, kinship. You, not yet 10, and a strange elderly woman inhaling a wad of beef in the busy heart of a dying marketplace. She hooked an onion and small disc of pickle. You drank the juice and went to find your mother. Spotted her chatting with a friend she grew up with. There is nothing so unsettlingly beautiful as the joy in a parent's face when you're not around. You saw your mother move in new ways, coy, assured, unburdened. You sidled up beside her, still young enough to be at her hip, and watched their hands fly back and forth, a rapid blur that could have easily flowed seamlessly into the rhythm of playground clapping games. You offered a pickle to the friend. She accepted, but only if you took a handful of chewy peppermint. She leaned down, and much too young to even know what was happening, found yourself looking down her blouse. Can only remember how striking she was. Swarthy brow, halo of black earth curls, her vanilla oil cutting through the marketplace. And then something just took you, and you reached out, grabbed her breast, and shimmied it hard. Having been here before, she gently took your hand away. We don't do that just yet. They laughed about it, but as you left, your mother took you aside and made you understand what you had done. Asked if you did this before. You shook your head, and she gently let you know that girls have to be okay with it. How touch was life. How touch was everything. She pointed at the rancid, spitting deli clerk. Do you want him to touch you? All it took was a single analogy for consent to stick and stay. This was how you thought, and after your mother's patient words, this was now the way of the world. She gave you exploration and empathy, loosened your mind, built your stilts, made you a listener and watcher, alley cat, someone who knows patience, but also when to run with wild dogs and lean into a stranger's kiss. The American dream is the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Thank you, Dayton. And I have to apologize. I missed Tracy on our list earlier, so we're going to go a little out of our order here and invite Tracy Hott to come off mute and read for us.
Thanks, Lizzie. All right. I am not reading for my thesis. I am reading some poetry that I've written in the last year here. And the first poem is 11 p.m. at the crosswalk. And it's snowing like Vermont snows at night, a blurred magic, December lights flickering like it's all right. She is sitting on cardboard on concrete, the usual spot, alone, corner of State and Maine. I give her my gloves. I am 4 vodkas into the night. I remember a story. It goes something like, a long time ago, another coast, another life. I slummed and scavenged and hustled and begged, sunk years in minutes, back where meaning still holds her breath. I know the shadow of you, the shadows in me, a muted listening, a withholding, a kind of melancholy, a melody, how emptiness sings, surround sound shrill, a closed-end sadness, a cry to the clouds, a splatter of darkness, drawn bleak black over curdled sky, sky breathing me in like thoughts, the way it feels when you can't feel, feels like abandon, tomorrow abandonment. She is not young, not old. Sometimes she sings. She isn't singing. This one is called And Then Divorce. And then divorce. There and there, and then no more. Shattering beliefs and expectations, the litter of all those moments, resonating, the rhythm of despair, regurgitating blame and backstory, a parataxis of a lifetime together, then nothing, an erasure of being, and then being like never before. Too much to hold on to, a two-toned existence. And I can't tell them why. I could, but won't. Whatever. Too nice, too afraid, too something. Unremarkable in the realm of statistics, still. My heart disintegrates and blooms at the same time. This one is called Tuesday. Tuesday. It feels like I'm stuck in a pair of too tight pants. The cling, the hanging on, the hopelessness of ever getting out. I wouldn't call it depression. I'd call it overwhelmingness. It feels like too much, not enough. Too much talking, too much silence. The weight of nothing as heavy as everything. I wouldn't call it anxiety. I'd call it self-preservation. It feels like I'm trapped inside a speaker. My screams blare, boomerang, but no one can hear, and even I can't make out my words anymore. I wouldn't call it self-destruction. I'd call it thoughtful deconstruction. The tunnels of my mind collapsing, slipping farther down the scale. I shuffle, I spread, I rise like smoke until I disappear. I wouldn't call it, I'm done calling things by name. And the last one is called What We Weigh. Tell me if it's too much. It's too much. I know. The wobble has begun. The ache of it bellows, blows, and woes. Clip it just so, label it, set it aside. That walk in the park is just what it's right there, right there. Nope, gone in a puff of smoke. The sun illuminates my bed. I watch the light as it crawls away. Fuzzy whiteness, glowing. I breathe you in like electricity, split easy, like melting, like a drip humming. I'm sliding up, going and going. The shade will do, with its whispers and wants, with its halfness, with its holiness, with its I don't want to-ness, scraping strands of sedation. Please, be non-specific. Red, a hard red smear, the reek of it raw and septic, a stain dark as rash, smearing the soil of your insides, a red scarf dancing in the raw, brittle air, red like hunger's screams, pulling. A cut up life, a careful carving, a ripped reality, and night like day, still unreliable. That's enough now. Let the paint dry. You can try to ignore the fumes, but the stink stays. I said, tell me, but I've changed my mind. Here, give it to me. It is light as smell, empty as you want. I know, I made it so. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Beautiful. Next, we have Amara Okolo.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read a story that I wrote a long time ago, but I just saw it and kind of love it. Okay, so I'll stop. My husband chewed with his mouth open. Whether it was corned beef with sticky strands of spaghetti or white rice drenched in curried stew, he made something as easy as eating a disgusting chore. When he used cutlery, there was an unwanted symphony of stainless steel spoons clacking on stainless steel plates. Even after I changed the plates to porcelain ceramic, this annoying scrapping did not cease. The stainless spoon clinked against his teeth, the sound like the one my fake gold earrings made whenever I dropped them into the jewelry box every evening. Then he would munch on each morsel, biting noisily, his lips slapping against each other like bathroom slippers on a wet concrete. It was worse when he ate with his hands. He would grab a morsel of eba with his right fist, slap it against his left palm, and with two hands, roll the paste to a smooth ball. Then he would sink the ball into the floating ogbono soup. Ogbono was his favorite. Drag it clockwise while at the same time snatching up chunks of fish and omo. The hand would travel in a trail of slime into his mouth, and after he swallowed, he would smack his lips, the soup shining around his lips and jawline. If he was really pleased with my cooking, he would belch, the echo resonating through the sitting room, and if he was not, he would still belch anyway. My husband was not a man of choices when it comes to food. Today, he was eating white eba with egusi soup. Yellow eba was his favorite, but today at the market, I had found out that yellow gari now costs 3 times more than the white gari, 25 naira Derika tin. Imagine that. Before setting up for the market, I had written down 20 naira beside the word Gary on my shopping list. This list I had shown to my husband, who in turn gave me the ground sum of 500 naira for everything on the list. 100 naira was supposed to buy 4 cups of yellow Gary. I stared at the useless naira notes in my hand through my sunglasses as the woman sitting beside the large plastic bowls of the Gary pyramids told me the new price. I thought it was 20 naira. Ah no, palm oil 2 costs now. The white one, now that one be 20 naira now. I have just 20. So what do you want me to do? Don't you know prices have increased? Please go away if you're not buying. I thought about my husband and how he would feel if I bought white Gary in place of his favorite. Then I thought about what he would do if I bought no Gary instead. I gave the woman the notes and pointed to the bowl with the white pyramid. Now my husband was eating the Gary and so far was not complaining. I sat away from him in my favorite armchair, my hands shuffling through a tray of brown beans. I had plans of making moi moi tomorrow morning. NEPA had just taken light and the rusty ceiling fan on the watermarked ceiling overhead was slowing down its spins with an irritating squeak. The louvered windows were open, the satin curtains over them bundled up in large knots. A humid breeze drifted in. It was the middle of March, and the weather was undecided on giving us rain, so the sun bullied us with steaming heat. Beads of sweat spotted my husband's forehead as he swallowed a large morsel of eba, his fingers coated with the pleasant colors of sunny yellow ground egusi, green leafy sliced ugu, and thin strands of utazi. The air was heady with its smell. He hiccupped, and I stood up and handed him a glass of water. At the top floated few ice cubes, and they lay against my husband's upper lip as he emptied the glass, gulp by gulp. Then he set it down on the mahogany table with a sigh. The ice cubes sat on the base of the glass, ignored, like a rejected lover. Thank you. I did not answer. A startled weevil escaped from a fistful of beans I had sorted out, running through the tray, and I halted its escape by crushing it with my finger. Your soup is sweet today. I wiped the smudge of what had been the weevil on my wrapper. Thank you, I said. But why did you buy white Gary? You know I don't like it. I stole a glance at him. He had abandoned the plate of eba and was now scooping the soup into his mouth. The sound of his smacking lips, slopping tongue, and hearty burps made my stomach churn. Yellow Gary is too expensive. I had to manage what I had. That is good. You are now behaving like my wife. If you always behaved like this, I would not have troubles with you. You see? I plucked at a weevil-infested bean, damaged with holes, and inspected it before dumping it into the pigmel tin beside the tray on my lap. It was sparsely filled with similar beans, damaged with the weevils and flaky when borrowed. A few weevils meandered lazily amongst them, eating away what had not yet been eaten. There were some questions that were not to be answered. The smacking of lips stopped, a bop, then a belch that rocked the squeaky, ratted sofa my husband was sitting on. I took it as a cue and dropped the tray on the ground. I went to his side and took up the pink plastic bowl, half filled with water, raising it up for him to wash his hands. The bowl had been given as a souvenir at our neighbor's wedding, a butcher who sold goat meat at relief markets. He and his wife graced the side of the bowl in a laminated stick-on flap, their gaunt faces grainy with fading blue ink. Happy married life to the couple was written in cursive beside 2 clinking champagne flutes and a bouquet of flowers, the type of flowers I could not tell. They looked like roses, but at second glance, they also looked like water lilies. My husband sank his hands into the water, and I watched as he wrung them through it, hands with bulbous sticks of vein running through rich dark skin. A spot of skin on his right knuckle was peeled away, revealing the pink flesh underneath, and I looked away. The water colored quickly to a dirty yellow, like the urine of a malaria patient. He shook his fingers when he was done. Droplets of water hitting my forearms, and I brought the plastic down to the floor. Only then did I look at him. He was smiling at me, his eyes with a hint of coy amusement. A piece of ugu stuck to one of his 2 frontal teeth, and for a minute, it looked like he had no tooth there. For a minute, he looked disastrously ugly too. Joy bubbled in my guts. But then he spoke. Look at you, behaving like a meek cat. This is good. I should hit you more often. You seem like when I beat you, your brain resets and you realize that you are my wife and I am your husband. I am impressed. He stood up, wiped his hands on the side of his black cotton trousers, and left the room. I gathered up the plates, and as I picked up the glass, I caught my reflection, expanded and blazed. The welt around my left eye was beginning to subside, but the bruise stung when I ran my fingers below my eye. I dropped the glass into the bowl of the leftover eba and called my daughter to come clear the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Amara. Last but not least, we have Laura Kuyawa.
Hi, thank you so much. This is a flash piece that I wrote back in January, though it feels very appropriate now. I wish it was more fun, but it's not. So here we go. It's called The Lessee. She saw him through the peephole before he tried the door. There was a tinkle of keys, the sound on metal, a dull thunk as tumbler turned, and then the door opened. But the chain lock saved her. She took 2, then 3 more deep breaths. She could see his warm red face in the half-open couple of inches, read his warm, thick lips as they formed his words, the ends of them traveling up in a series of sing-song questions. But he wasn't invited in. She wasn't ready to issue any invitation. She could not receive him. It was much too messy, too dirty, old dishes everywhere, weeks unwashed, mold growing, water stinking with lily pads of slime, diseased, floating to the top. This was her room. She simply couldn't let him in. But even after she shut the door, she heard him knocking. She called out her excuses, asked him to go again. He peered past her then, taking in the muddle of it all. His nostrils flared. Jaw locked, she explained that she didn't want any company, not today, but the man kept visiting. I'm happy this way, she half yelled to him from a corner, knee-deep in yellowed laundry and old forts of cardboard boxes and stale, hazy air. But he opened the door again, a few centimeters more, straining against the chain, the door jamb, her weight, and he disagreed. Some days he would pass her things through the gap. Old mail, postcards she hadn't sent, stuffed toys missing eyes or legs or tails, a feather boa losing its fuzz that he had found somewhere. He said it had reminded him of the golden age. She smiled and told him that she had never had one. He asked her which one she meant, a boa or a golden age. Sometimes he would bring news from beyond the door. She assured him, fists curled tightly around the knob, one on top of the other, nails biting into nails that she didn't want to know, but of course he still told her. He told her about Pillsbury's new recipe for apple pie, all-American, the pretty woman on TV who had released her secrets to the perfect bikini line, the winner of the 4-H's prized pig title at the county fair. He told her, laughing, teeth glinting, about the nuts tourists offered the squirrels at the park, letting them eat out of their cupped hands. He told her all of this until she could smell the steaming buttered crusts, feel those stubborn, pesky, ingrown hairs in secret places, or the coarse, nubbled hides of snorting, mud-spotted flesh, until she could feel the softness of tiny, searching paws in her own palms. He asked again to be let inside. She politely declined. But she grew to want his intel, thirsty for it. The rusted, leaking drip, drip, drip of the bathroom tap could not satisfy any more as she lowered her parched lips to it. His voice could drown out the persistent drumbeat drops. He fed her in a way that the lonesome contents of the room's old cabinets could not, even with the birthday candles she stuck in every meal, their smoky glow casting a cityscape of mismatched penumbra out of the cast-offs and carryalls she kept in the dark there. She scarfed up each bit he passed her from the other side of the door and hid them under the mattress like hoarded sweets. They were all hers. They didn't belong to the dirty swell of moss and lichen that covered the floorboards of her comfortable room. And then one day, the man stopped knocking. She listened for the jangle of his keys, but none came. She called to him through the gap, though she did not know his name. She even undid the chain and opened the door herself, though she did not dare step out. Snaking her hand along the eggshell surface of the wall, she felt an animal warmth. He had been there not long ago, but wasn't there now. She told herself that this was right. This was how it ought to be. And then the heavy mildewed curtains and mud and filth and garbage and tree roots and gray-green lettuce-smelling messes began to rise and reach for her until it was all she could do but stay from the door. It reached up and swallowed her whole again, showing her. "You're right," it said. "You're correct." Its heady scent wove round her, a comfort again. The man wasn't coming back then. She knew it, knew better than to expect his knock. She cried for him, mourned the loss of his voice, mourned the gift she would no longer receive. She lit 4 birthday candles that night, letting them melt right into the plate. The candy-colored waxes ran together and she bent over them, so close that all she could see was flame. At her throat, the boa caught.
Thank you, Laura. All right. If I'm not mistaken, that was our last reader for the evening. So Rita, I will turn it back to you to close us out.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you, everyone who read tonight, our first-year students and our graduating students. That was wonderful. Some really poignant, moving, funny, touching pieces that we heard tonight. So thank you so much. It was lovely to hear all the different genres from poetry, playwriting, nonfiction, and fiction. Thank you to everyone else who joined. I'm seeing a lot of our students who are joining us next year, incoming students into the MFA program and certificate program on this call. And I'm also seeing a lot of our alums, which is like super exciting. Thank you for coming back. And thank you to all the faculty in our program who are here tonight and all of our visiting writers who are here as well. So it's lovely to see all of you. One thing I'd like to do before we all sign off is if everyone would like to maybe unmute their video, let's give a round of applause to all of our readers tonight. You can also unmute your audio at this time to do so. So this is the moment to say congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Awesome, everyone. All right. Have a good evening, everybody.